If Kira gets caught, he is evil. But if Kira rules the world, he is justice. Light Yagami. Out of every show that I've seen in my life, Death Note is by far my favorite series of all time. It tells the story of a student named Light Yagami who finds a notebook outside and realizes later that the notebook itself can kill anyone whose name is written in it. So Light goes on this quest to rid the world of evil. Death Note is such a good show that I've seen it at least 5 times, which is a bit unfortunate, and is also exactly why in this week's episode of Master Talk, I'll be teaching you the 3 key lessons that I've learned from that TV series that apply to every single presentation that I've ever done in my life. Hi everyone, Brendan here from Master Talk on your go-to channel to mastering your talk, and today we're talking Death Note. So let's start writing. Number 1, always plan for the worst and never hope for the best. Light Yagami is a fascinating character within the Death Note series. As he starts perpetrating his crimes and writing the names of different individuals in his notebook, police organizations across the world are after him. But of course, Light is 10 steps ahead of every other person. So much so that he plans every bad thing in advance to make sure that he never gets caught. And that's why the police has so much trouble trying to find who he is. There's many different things that Light did in that series to make sure he stayed ahead. One is he literally got a part of the investigation. He became a police officer himself in his own investigation, and he set up his Death Note in a way that if somebody found it, it would catch on fire. And these are the types of ideas that always made a mark on me since I first watched the series at 12 years old. Because as my life went on in the future, I always started thinking subconsciously about every bad thing that could ever happen in my life, especially in the context of public speaking and presentations. When most speakers walk into a room, they're not really that stressed out. They just give a presentation and are done with it. Whereas when I go into a presentation, I think of every bad situation that could ever happen. What if my audience starts throwing rocks at me? What happens if they start verbally assaulting me? Or I'm late and they don't let me in, the doors are locked and I can't get inside. So my mindset is always different than most. And that's why whenever I go into a keynote presentation, I say, wow, this presentation is really easy. Nobody's throwing rocks at me. Everyone's just sitting there quiet. So this is going to be a really great presentation. So going back to you, much like Light Yagami, start thinking about the worst case scenarios in your presentations and find solutions for them so that whenever you actually present, it's always easier. Number 2, understand the darkness in your opponent's heart. The core of Death Note revolves around 2 characters who constantly chase each other like a cat and mice game. And the 2 characters are, of course, Light, that we've talked about earlier in this episode, and the other character is by the name of L. L is a police investigator whose job is to find Light Yagami and figure out who this Kira person is, whereas Kira's goal is to get rid of the police and be very successful. So at every step of the show, for them to find each other, they're always thinking about what the other person would do. So if L was sitting on a chair like this, perhaps, thinking through what Kira would do next or what Light would do next, he would say, well, if I was Light, this is how I would approach this problem. This is what I would do next. And Light would do the same thing. Well, if I was the police, this would be my next direction. This is how I would achieve the success. And it's an intense game of cat and mice, I might add, because if one finds the other person dies. That's how intense this game is. But it also shows an extreme version of audience obsession. The best speakers in the world obsess over their audience so much so that they invest a lot of their thinking time into the minds of their audience. They even go as far as to think that their audience members are opponents that are trying to beat them. Because if you understand your audience so much more than even they understand themselves, your presentations will always be very successful. So if you want to be a world-class speaker, or I guess a world-class investigator, you're going to spend that extra 30 minutes, that extra time thinking through the minds of your audience so you can deliver the best possible message. Number 3, the only way to be interesting to someone who lives forever is to be unique. Ryuk, who is known as a Shinigami in the series Death Note, is a god of death. And in the series, what we learn is that these individuals are really bored. They spend their entire days in a depressing universe where they essentially just watch humans go about their activities on a daily basis and gamble. That's pretty much it. And the Death Note was original Ryuk's, but then he threw the Death Note into the human world for one simple reason, because he was bored. And what interested me personally about the show is how interesting as a character Light Yagami is to Ryuk. Because most people use the Death Note for selfish reasons when they get one. They use it to make money, they use it to take revenge on somebody, but Light specifically used it to get rid of the world of evil and to become a god of that world. And that always fascinated Ryuk because of the unique goals that Light had. And I thought that was fascinating because as human beings, it's our uniqueness that makes us interesting. It's the unique perspective that we have that really shines a light and makes our topics, our presentations, and our conversations that much more refreshing. So if there's anything I've learned from the fascination that Ryuk has with light, it's this, that we should share our uniqueness with the world too. Whether that uniqueness is simply the candies that we like to eat on a daily basis, karaokeing in 8 different languages, which happens to be my case, or dancing alone in my mom's basement as well, when we share more of who we are, and rather who we uniquely are, that's when the world becomes a little bit more interesting for all of us. If Kira gets caught, he is evil. But if Kira rules the world, he is justice. Out of every single show that I've seen in my life, Death Note takes the cake. It's a fascinating, well-crafted series about how this college student tried to change the world with a notebook. And I hope that from this episode, you didn't just leave it at the series, but you were able to apply some of the lessons that we learned into our own presentations, preparing for the worst, imagining ourselves into the shoes of other people, and of course, embracing our uniqueness. So if you do that just a little bit more, maybe, just maybe, a notebook will fall out of the sky just for you. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of Master Talk, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to see more videos like this. And if you know one person that's a fan of the Death Note series, be sure you send them this video so that they'll be one step closer to stepping into the light. See you next time, everyone.